Good afternoon, and we're coming on the air because of an awful scene playing out today in Texas. An active shooter for a time at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. This is about 80 miles outside of San Antonio. There is word potentially multiple children have been killed. This happened at the Robb Elementary School in the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District. The alleged gunman opening fire off campus, then reportedly running into the school, barricading himself in a classroom where it's believed the shooting continued, the school on lockdown. Uvalde Memorial Hospital confirming at this hour 13 children arriving at the ER. That hospital also confirming to ABC News at least 2 children killed. But sources telling us at this hour this number could be far worse. I want to bring in investigative reporter Aaron Kotursky as we look at aerials coming in from the scene. Again, Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. This is about 80 miles or so, perhaps a little longer the distance, but outside San Antonio, Texas. Reports that some have been brought to San Antonio as well. And again, one hospital already confirming 2 children dead. And Aaron, we're learning from sources at this hour that this is sadly going to likely be much worse here.
It does seem that way, David. Multiple law enforcement sources tell ABC News that potentially 14 people have been killed in this shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. That does include the suspect, we're told from multiple law enforcement sources, an 18-year-old suspected shooter killed as this shooting scene unfolded. Law enforcement sources have been trying to nail down specifically the numbers that they're working with. It is still an active scene, as you can see there. So many people gathered round to try and figure out what happened, taping off the areas that were the scene of this shooting. But multiple law enforcement sources tell ABC News, David, that potentially as many as 14 people, including a number of children, have been killed today at this school.
Chilling to hear that number, obviously in a time when we've been reporting on shootings on the rise in this country. Aaron, what more do we know about the scene as it unfolded? Initially, reports had come in that the shooting began off campus, then the shooter reportedly going into that school. Do we know anything more about where the children might have been targeted, whether or not inside the school or outside before that shooter made it indoors?
Nothing confirmed, David, and law enforcement sources say they are still trying to piece together exactly how all of this unfolded. They've focused on the suspected shooter, an 18-year-old who is, according to multiple sources, dead there at the scene after some kind of involvement with law enforcement. We also hear that at least one law enforcement officer may be among those shot, although the condition is not exactly clear. How this unfolded, whether it took place inside, outside, law enforcement sources say they are still trying to piece together, but the ATF, the FBI, and a number of agencies in Texas have all responded to the scene, David.
And of course, you can see significant law enforcement presence on the scene already in Uvalde, Texas. Outside both Austin and San Antonio, of course. The reason we bring up San Antonio is because there are reports some have been brought to San Antonio for medical help. And again, as I mentioned when we came on the air, Uvalde Memorial Hospital reporting at least 2 children dead. And as you heard our investigative reporter Aaron Kotursky just report, sources now telling ABC News that as many as 14 people, including children, could have been killed here this afternoon in Uvalde, Texas, at yet another shooting in this country. ABC's Maria Villarreal is our reporter in Texas, and Maria knows this community. Maria is with us on the phone, and can you just describe to us, I understand this is a rural community, a close-knit community, a relatively small one.
David, that's exactly right. I mean, this community is about an hour and a half or so outside of San Antonio, Texas. They have less than 20,000 people living in the area, and they are a farming and ranching community. We were just there not too long ago covering some border issues. The mayor in the town telling us over the last 2 months they have been wrestling with a lot of immigration issues, but more importantly, just describing really the community essence of his town, talking about how they are so close-knit, so tight-knit. We are about 30 minutes away from Uvalde right now, and on our road trip down there, we have seen a number of law enforcement agencies driving down there extremely fast. We know that the local sheriff's department in San Antonio, Bexar County, as well as the San Antonio Police Department, they are also responding to this area. One thing to note, you just mentioned right now that there are a number of of potential victims that are being taken to the San Antonio area. And that's because, this town is so small and their hospital is so small that a incident of this magnitude, what we're talking about, there is no way this hospital could respond to this. I was in touch with the mayor's office. They do tell me right now that this is a very flexible, very fluid situation, but they are trying to get in touch with as many parents as quickly as they can. We do know that the children that were evacuated from this elementary school were taken to a local civic center so their parents could pick them up. But this is just a very scary situation. As anybody knows that has covered this kind of stuff, and still a lot of details coming in as we continue to get down there.
You've been listening to Maria Villarreal, our correspondent based in Texas. She's on her way to the scene, and she's already talked with sources in that community who have now the difficult task, as they so often do when there are shootings across this country, of reaching out to inform parents in that community of just the horrific scene that's played out in Uvalde, Texas this afternoon, certainly before they can confirm to any reporter on the scene or certainly on the national level what the actual numbers are. Again, we're on the air at this hour with our breaking news coverage of yet another school shooting in this country in Uvalde, Texas, at the Robb Elementary School. It's believed the hospital there in Uvalde reporting at least 2 children dead, and sources now telling ABC's Aaron Katersky, among others in our news division, that number could actually be far worse when authorities are finally able to confirm in front of the cameras what's played out today. Early reports, as many as 14 dead, and of course that number would include more children than initially reported by that hospital.